We live surrounded by screens, noise, and rush, yet inside, the emptiness screams. If this reflection speaks to you, consider liking and subscribing. It's a way not to walk alone in this modern silence that we all feel, but few admit. You post a photo. You wait. Someone likes it. You feel seen. Then, silence. And suddenly, the same question again. Am I still real if no one's looking? We call it connection. But it's not connection, it's confirmation. You don't post to express yourself. You post to make sure you still exist. Each heart, each view, each comment is a small permission to be, a digital pulse that says you matter, until it fades, and you start searching again. You scroll and scroll and scroll, not looking for something to see, but for something to feel, something to fill the noise inside. But what if that emptiness isn't a sign that something's wrong with you? What if the void you feel isn't a bug of modern life, but its very core? Because the truth is, that emptiness didn't begin with social media. It began with you, with all of us, with the first moment we realized we could be seen and that it would never be enough. This isn't a story about technology. It's a story about the wound that made you human. You were not born complete. You were born fragmented, a collection of sensations, cries, and needs that didn't yet know what they meant. Then something happened. Someone looked at you, someone named you, and for the first time you saw yourself through their eyes. That was the birth of the self, but also the birth of the wound. Because that reflection was never truly you. It was a version, a projection, a mirror built from the other's gaze. And from that moment on, you would spend your entire life trying to find what was lost in that reflection. Lacan called it the lack, the missing piece that defines everything you desire. You don't want what you want. You want what promises to close that gap inside you. Every relationship, every dream, every achievement, you chase not the object, but the illusion of being whole. That's why satisfaction never lasts. The moment you touch what you desire, the meaning dissolves. Because desire doesn't want fulfillment. It wants to keep desiring. It feeds on distance. That's the paradox. You're always moving towards something you'll never reach, because reaching it would kill the very thing that keeps you alive. And now you see where the wound begins. Not as a trauma that happened to you, but as the very structure of being human. You are the lack. You are the absence searching for itself. But here's where it gets darker. In Lacan's time, the world still gave space for desire to breathe. There were limits, taboos, distance, and distance creates desire. Today, the distance is gone. Everything is visible. Everything is available. And that changes everything. Because when there's no more distance, there's no more desire. And that's where the modern world begins to twist the wound, where our lack, once a silent mystery, becomes something to display, perform, and monetize. The wound didn't disappear. It just found a new mirror. And that mirror is glowing in your hand right now. Keep that thought, because in a moment, you'll see how this absence, this sacred space of lack, was devoured by the culture
of total exposure.
You wake up, you open your phone, and before you even know who you are today, you look for a reflection. Not in a mirror, but in a screen. Every scroll is a question. Who am I today? Am I still seen, still valid, still loved? Lacan called it the mirror stage, the moment the child first recognizes itself in a reflection and says, "That's me." But the tragedy is, that image isn't you. It's a fantasy of coherence, an illusion of wholeness you never truly have. Now, imagine that mirror never turning off. That's social media. It's not a tool. It's a symbolic field, a new big other that watches, names, and validates you. Every post is a plea to be seen by that other. Every like is a temporary confirmation that you exist. You're not talking to people, you're performing for the gaze. And this gaze doesn't rest. It scrolls, it compares, it quantifies. It turns your being into data, your pain into engagement. Soon, you don't ask, "Who am I?" You ask, "How am I perceived?" You start editing yourself to match the algorithmic ideal of the complete self. And little by little, the border between who you are and how you appear begins to fade. You start thinking in captions. You feel emotions only after imagining how they'd look on a story. The self becomes performative, a constant audition for approval. You curate, you filter, you sculpt your reflection until even your sadness feels staged. And when everything becomes performance, authenticity turns into another aesthetic. You're not living anymore. You're broadcasting existence, hoping someone will send it back to you in pixels of validation. But no one really does. They're all doing the same thing, screaming into mirrors that don't echo back. But here's the cruel part. The more perfect your reflection becomes, the less you feel real. Because deep down, you know it's not you. It's your lack, dressed up for display. That's why the feed never ends, because the recognition it gives evaporates the second it's received. You post, you wait, you refresh, and the silence between notifications becomes unbearable. You're not addicted to attention. You're addicted to the illusion that attention could finally make you whole. But hold on, this isn't the end of the story. Because the mirror doesn't just reflect your image, it starts to shape your desire. And that's where things turn darker. The next part will show how the digital gaze doesn't just see you, it teaches you what to want. Desire was once mysterious, private. It lived in silence, in absence, in what was missing. Now, it has a feed. You open your phone and the algorithm whispers, "I know what you want." But it doesn't. It just knows what keeps you wanting. That's the trick. It doesn't sell products. It sells continuation. An endless loop where every swipe promises the next hit of meaning, but never delivers it. Lacan said, "The object of desire is never the thing itself, it's the fantasy around it." And the algorithm learned this better than anyone. It doesn't show you what fulfills you. It shows you what almost does, again and again. That's why it feels so personal, so addictive. Because it's not feeding your pleasure, it's feeding your lack. Each time you scroll, you're saying, maybe this post will fill me. Maybe this time I'll feel enough. But you never do. Because that moment of almost there is what the system feeds on. And here's the cruel genius. The algorithm has no ideology, no morality, no self. It doesn't care what you love
or hate. It only cares about what keeps you here. It learns the shape of your desire, the patterns of your longing, your envy, your guilt, and mirrors them back to you as entertainment. So you keep returning, hoping for resolution, but finding only repetition. Because the scroll is not a search, it's a ritual, a modern prayer to the God of infinite lack. And when everyone performs this same ritual, society becomes a collective of restless seekers, chasing closure in a machine designed to prevent it. You might think you're scrolling freely, but what if it's the algorithm scrolling through you? What if it's the one writing your desire, line by line, post by post? Stay with that thought, because this is where the sickness of the modern world reveals its true face. The system that feeds on your emptiness doesn't just manipulate you, it tells you that being empty is a failure. And that's where the violence begins.
The algorithm didn't just learn how to exploit your lack, it learned how to shame you for it. Welcome to the age of positivity, where sadness is a glitch, where silence is suspicious, where every wound must be optimized, monetized, or hidden. Byung-Chul Han calls it the society of achievement, a world where we no longer obey, we perform. No one tells you what to do. You tell yourself, I must grow, I must heal, I must be happy, I must become complete. But here's the violence hidden behind the smile. You can't command yourself to be whole. Wholeness doesn't obey discipline. It was never meant to be achieved. This is what Han calls the violence of positivity, the tyranny of yes, the pressure to shine, to never stop producing, improving, posting, smiling. In the old world, we were repressed by prohibitions. Now, we're crushed by possibilities. No one says you can't. Everyone says you can. And that endless yes becomes the softest form of slavery. And when everyone is forced to shine, darkness becomes taboo. You stop resting, because rest feels like failure. You stop being, because only becoming is rewarded. Even your quiet moments are haunted by productivity. You can't just exist, you must document it. Every walk, every meal, every thought becomes potential content. You no longer live your life, you manage your image of living. And in this endless exhibition, something vanishes. The ability to be unseen, to be imperfect, to simply be. That disappearance is the true burnout Han warns about. Because when failure is no longer allowed, suffering becomes invisible, and those who can't keep up collapse in silence. You scroll through perfect lives and you think, what's wrong with me? But the sickness isn't yours. It's the demand to be healed. The constant war against the natural emptiness that makes you human. Lacan said the lack defines us. Han shows what happens when we try to erase it. The result is burnout, not from doing too little, but from trying to fill a void that was never meant to close. And here's the irony. The system that tells you to just be yourself is the same one selling you endless versions of who that self should be. But if the lack can't be erased, if desire can't be fulfilled, what remains? Maybe peace isn't found in the next upgrade,
the next success, the next perfect day. Maybe peace begins when you stop trying to fix the void and start listening to it. Because the wound that doesn't heal is the one that finally tells you the truth.
You were never meant to be complete, but the world keeps punishing you for it. Every ad, every post, every voice tells you you could be better, smarter, healthier, more spiritual, more productive, more everything. And when you can't keep up, you don't just feel tired, you feel guilty. That's the hidden cost of modern life, a permanent sense of failure for being human. You start believing that peace is something you have to earn, that rest must be justified, that love must be deserved. So you keep running, not because you want more, but because you fear what happens if you stop. But here's the paradox. The more you try to fix yourself, the further you move from yourself. Every act of self-improvement carries the secret message, I am not enough. That's how guilt disguises itself, not as sin, but as self-help. And the more you seek redemption through perfection, the more the wound deepens. Because the moment you believe your incompleteness is a flaw, you turn your very nature into a mistake. You start apologizing for existing in pieces, for feeling too much, for not being optimized. And that quiet shame becomes the most profitable fuel in the world. You're told to manifest abundance, but the algorithm thrives on your lack. You're told to think positive, but positivity kills reflection. You're told to let go, but letting go doesn't sell. And somewhere between the motivational quotes and the digital noise, you lose the right to simply be unfinished. But stay here for a moment, because this isn't hopeless. The guilt isn't a verdict, it's a signal. It means your soul remembers something the system forgot. That incompleteness is not failure, it's space. And that space is where peace begins. In the next part, we'll stop running, we'll stop optimizing, we'll listen to what the void has been trying to say all along, not as an enemy to overcome, but as the only place where truth still breathes.
You've spent your whole life running from the void, trying to fill it, silencing it, covering it with noise, with progress, with meaning. But what if the void was never the problem? What if it was the only honest thing left? The world teaches you to fix every silence, to turn stillness into productivity, to turn loneliness into content, to turn wounds into wisdom quotes. But the void doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be felt. When you stop treating emptiness as failure, something changes. The hunger softens, the noise quiets, and underneath all the striving, you start hearing something else. A pulse, a breath, a presence that doesn't demand, doesn't sell, doesn't scroll. It's you. The part that was never lost, just buried under the noise of trying to be more. Lacan was right. We are built from lack. Han was right. We are crushed by the illusion of completeness. But between those two truths, there's peace. Because to accept your lack is not to give up. It's to finally stop fighting reality, to stop expecting the wound to close, and instead learn to live with it open, as proof that you're still alive. Maybe healing isn't about becoming whole. Maybe it's about becoming real. Because wholeness is sterile. But truth bleeds. So let the void breathe. Let it exist without fixing it, without naming it, without turning it into another goal.
One day, you'll realize you were never meant to escape the wound. You were meant to wake up inside it. And in that silence, the chase ends. The lack remains. But it no longer hurts. It just is.
If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. You were taught to fix yourself before being seen, to earn love by becoming whole. But what if your cracks are not mistakes, they're entrances? What if the parts you hide are the only ones still alive? We spend our lives chasing completion, but the moment we reach for it, it disappears. Because wholeness is not a state, it's a direction, a horizon that keeps us moving, breaking, awakening. Don't apologize for being unfinished. The wound isn't proof that something's wrong with you. It's proof that you're still becoming.